Hello and welcome to another edition of Pricing College with your hosts Aidan Campbell
and Joanna Wells.
In today's episode, we want to dig a bit deeper into a topic we've covered a couple of times in previous episodes, and that is, I think we've said, it's vital, it's so important that a pricing transformation or a major pricing project has CEO or C-suite backing. And I suppose today we're going to dig into that. We're going to do a bit of a question and answer format because I think that works quite well. So we'll be asking our resident pricing expert, Joanna, these questions. So I suppose there she's smiling at that suggestion. So the first one is, I suppose, an open-ended question. Why is it important to have C-suite backing?
Well, let's start with the simple truths and facts about pricing. The importance of CEO and C-suite backing comes down to the returns that you can get from pricing. They're more than substantial and very impressive when you compare it to changes in, when you compare a change in price to changes in cost, volume, and mix, for instance. So you can say, if you were going to a 2% increase in prices versus not increasing prices, can lead to an impressive and direct flow to the bottom line of 20 to 30%. Obviously, here I'm thinking, volume is the same and constant, and we've got our supply chain and costs in control. But I think you can hear the message here. If you just make very small improvements and changes to pricing, you can get a lot of money for it. So that's why, number one, it's very important that the C-suite understand how much leverage, monetary leverage they have with pricing, and equally, if they do pricing incorrectly, how much margin they could potentially lose.
Okay, so I think we understand. That's clear that it's important for the business. But does the CEO have to be involved in this project? Do the C-suite have to be involved? Can they not just delegate it down to, a finance manager or someone like that?
I like how you mentioned, delegating down. It's always about, I hear this a lot, and look, I agree with delegating to the right people, but if that in itself can be a problem. I think initially it's very important for the executive team, A, to understand the importance of it, as I've already stressed, and B, to get behind it and to be shown as a consistent voice on the topic of pricing, even if their areas are in, their areas of expertise are in supply chain, sales, product pricing. They still need to get behind the pricing project because pricing often touches all of those areas inadvertently. And what we also find, if the executive team, they're role models for change. And what we commonly see within our clients, if they're not really behind it, they don't understand it, they're not committed, and they're just more focused on their area, almost this siloed culture, and they're sort of paying a lip service to, the role of pricing. Yeah, it's important, we get that. But that really isn't what I call sponsorship. That's just lip service to sponsorship. You've really got to take an active role, because if the executives don't do that, then it sends a clear message to anyone that they're going to delegate the responsibility of pricing to, that it's really not that serious, and they can just tack it on at the end of their normal day job, and nothing really gets done, or if it gets done poorly.
That makes sense to me, I think. I think we've covered also some other podcasts how pricing often, slips between the gaps. Which function does it fit into? Is it finance? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Or is it the commercial function, which some companies, let's be honest, don't really have? So, I completely understand that it needs to be, for a real pricing project to really work, it needs to work across multiple functions. So I completely understand that. The other thing I think is, if just on this point, if people do what they're incentivized to do, and I think that concept you mentioned of leadership, role modeling, people know what, if the higher ups care about something. I think there was an old anecdote about it. Some executive, what do you care about today? I care about what my boss cares about, and that's how you get promoted. So I think it is it is really important. That makes a lot of sense to me.
I think, when you mentioned, where it should be delegated to, should it be, the finance manager? And often if there isn't an established pricing team, it does go to some kind of finance manager often, or a commercial manager. And I think, when it gets down to it, the real reason why you need executive sponsorship, especially if you're going to move to strategic pricing or a value-based pricing system. You really do need sponsorship there, because what you're actually saying is, I'm going to change how we think about our customers, how we think about how we do business, how we think about making money. We're no longer going to anchor ourselves to our costs. We're no longer just going to look at maximising margin by, putting pressure on our suppliers, thinking smart about procurement. We're actually going to believe in ourselves and the value of our products, and we're going to articulate that to the market, and we're going to invest in our sales team's capability. We're going to install a new pricing manager, and we're no longer just going to delegate pricing, tactical pricing based on cost plus methodology and tools to a finance manager who just rolls out that same tried and tested legacy pricing method based on cost plus. Now, that is the crux of why you need sponsorship. It's a mindset change. It's a complete culture shift. And you know what, Aidan, sometimes the CEO needs to be reminded of that, because often, obviously, they're not a value-based pricing expert. They've been grounded in that cost plus modelling and viewpoint of doing business, like 99% of businesses have been for the last hundreds of years, but it doesn't work anymore. So sometimes, you need a good CEO will ask for that, additional support and education on why they must go to a new system. Often they know deep down it's right, but just like they need to be reminded, their teams need to be reminded, because it's a new habit, it's a new way of thinking. And once you've got that mindset change in place, you can then build capability. And then you can keep reminding of the importance of pricing by getting your executive teams there, sponsoring, educating, nudging the teams, encouraging them, recognising all the good work they're doing in new areas, rather than reacting and going back to cost plus when things get a bit hairy.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Look, I'm assuming we're not proposing that CEOs, go to every meeting and sit in on pricing projects. But, at the same time, clearly if pricing is successful, or if this project, even if it's a fiasco, we have to be aware that the C-suite have to be aware that what's happening in the business. They have to be aware of the drivers, what is driving volume change, profitability change, all that sort of stuff. So I think my question I'll ask is, what would you propose would be a sensible level of CEO or C-suite engagement? Would it be a weekly meeting? Is there a reporting style that they need to be looking at? Are they in kick-off meetings? Are they just championing stuff? Where would they be involved?
These are good questions, and actually I have met a number of CEOs that inadvertently have been the pricing manager for their businesses, pretty much because they didn't have the governance, the setup in the business, the right structures, the right approvals process in the business, and everything therefore was escalated to them by the sales manager or the finance manager. So inadvertently they had to do all the pricing, like all the tender pricing, the negotiations with customers, and they were the most knowledgeable. However, that's unsustainable. That's not the role of a CEO, and a CEO would know that. So what I would suggest that this is a balance between knowing the principles of pricing. So everybody needs to have an understanding of the basic principles of value-based pricing. And you also need to have your organisation set up appropriately, have the right approvals processes in place. So then when there are serious matters like market-changing matters or serious money at risk from a large customer who is threatening to switch, and it's going to impact the P&L. Those sort of things would and should be escalated, but with a thorough rationale and evidence for supporting the why behind it, so a CEO could comprehensively read through the detail without having to get right into it. And then in my view here, and what I've seen work well, is that the CEO is almost like a chairman of a meeting. It's not the ultimate decision maker, it's the people around him that or her that needs to make that decision. And that overall, with the evidence provided, that they together make the right call. Does that sort of answer your question? But you see, before we even get there, we've got a road of, how do we, what level, I was hearing what level of education does a CEO need to know? I think the basic principles, the fundamentals of, economics 101 and the reason for change, good case studies, understanding the business model changes and trying to align their pricing according to that. Now, here I'm hearing as well, we also need to get everybody else on board so they trust their go-to people, their sales executive, their commercial executive. So when they feed the information to them, they go, okay, that makes sense. Okay, I think we've actually got more of a decision here than we actually thought, and then together they can make a call. But that does require capability build, and often I think sometimes executive teams shy away from pricing because they don't want to invest in themselves and build that capability, even in the executive team.
I think any senior leader, whether you're like a general manager, whether you're an executive, or whether you're the big dog, realistically, you're short in time. I think everyone's short in time. That's the modern corporate world. Meetings, emails, appointments, travel, all this sort of stuff. So clearly, any executive is going to have very limited time for a new project, right? So, is there a sort of a format or a best practice for, dashboard reporting? Clearly, these people, or it's very unlikely, but clearly they're not going to all be on the C-suite. They're not going to all be by any means pricing experts or even commercial experts. So clearly there's got to be a level of detail that they should have, but that isn't, it isn't always granular. I'm assuming there's some sort of, what would you suggest there for, what metrics or what sort of stuff should they be looking at? And does that change, through the process, through the project? Clearly, what you're looking at in week one, to manage something, you need to know the detail. What is the detail they need to know?
Okay, right. When I hear about this, I think, that's why I started with the rationale with the impact of pricing on the P&L. It's quite significant. That if we can all agree at the C-suite that this is worth the effort, is pricing worth it? Yes, it is. But you've got to have agreement on that. But what I often see is that, yes, executives may agree on that, but deep down, they're not prioritizing correctly. So they go, well, this is a priority, but actually it's put on the back burner, and then it's as you say, it's delegated to a finance manager. And even though there's major price increases at the moment, the strategic pricing isn't given the attention and investment that it requires, and then therefore people think it doesn't work. So I think one of the problems here is that you have to have clear priorities as an executive team, and when you say pricing is a priority, you've got to back it up. I think that clarifies a lot. Now, once you've decided that actually pricing is a priority, then you've got to put in place those commercial systems that I think you're alluding to, Aidan, that helps fast track and give executives what they want, so they're not crawling through the detail at every price rise, every price tender, every account. They just simply don't have the time for that. But here, to build that structure is a project, and throughout industries we're hearing those to be referred to as pricing transformations. Now, to really make sure that you want to fast track that, pricing transformation, just get the fundamentals right, because I think you just want an answer here. What I would do if I was a CEO, an executive team, I would make the first call here and say, should decision making in pricing be centralized? That will cut out huge amounts of work for you, huge amounts of work, because currently, as we all know, most businesses, there's discretionary pricing and hundreds of salespeople, product managers, all having changing, setting pricing, price overrides, the whole lot's happening. So it's very difficult to escalate any sensible recommendation to the executive based on discretionary pricing. So to cut a long story short, if you want clearer answers and fast, think about centralizing your strategic decision making. But obviously, you're in a complex B2B, B2C businesses. You want to give your sales teams the flexibility they need to make a sale. So here, think about and consider, decentralizing execution and putting the two together. In that instance, you'll go through a pricing transformation with much clearer direction, and you'll be able to be given the information that you require along the way. And over time, things will just get easier. But I will not. I'm not saying this is a journey. It's not just one or two decisions. And here you've got your silver bullet recommendation. You just have to go through one or two pages and decision done. Things don't work like that. We're realistic business people here. It doesn't work in any other area like that. So it doesn't work in pricing like that. So it's small steps, but making the right decisions. And being guided by logic, sense, and the market.
Okay, so I suppose just maybe a final point. What metrics should they know? And this is probably I'm pushing this point a bit. Should they know margins? Should they know the general company's margins? Should they be aware? I'm assuming they should be aware of the actual pricing strategy that we're pursuing. I'm assuming we should be, if we're doing value-based pricing, they should know that. They should know about if we're bundling. They should know about what our overarching pricing strategy is. I'm assuming they should know our margins going up or down. I'm assuming they should know, what we're doing to prevent margin decline, what we're doing, vis-a-vis that. Should they know about, and again, this is, a CEO, I'm almost painting, in my mind, a perfect CEO. They should know what the company, the values of the company, the pluses and weaknesses are, those value drivers. Should that be something they should be discussing at these meetings?
I think this is. If they were discussing these sorts of things at meetings, it would be great. I rarely see it. However, but yes, I do think that would be absolutely a well-informed executive team meeting. When I've gone into businesses, I've often found it's very difficult for executives to make any call because their teams haven't been able to provide them with even baselines on price metrics, on margin. And often you think, gosh, it's astounding, but even the baseline level, like where we're at now with costs, is, it's incredibly difficult to get that level of detail, especially as we know there's been major commodity changes and fluctuations and things like that. But in terms of pricing, yes, getting the baselines, understanding price elasticity, understanding the opportunity in long tail pricing. I think we were talking about that connects with elasticity, understanding which parts of your products are highly sensitive and highly and which you can I suppose make a change to pricing and nothing will happen, those inelastic products, understanding in specifically the value drivers of your customers, why they're buying for you, those sort of things are really interesting to executives. And once they get that information, they can start piecing it together, and they don't have to go into the details, the nuts and bolts of price management. Then you can trust your pricing team to do their job. Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there today. I think all this is suggesting to me that wouldn't it be wonderful if there was some format or system that would make this easy for CEOs to do? Wouldn't that be a valuable product or service?
I suppose it would. And, we've been, working with executives and CEOs in the past few years now on building commercial systems that provide these sort of answers to and support systems to executives and their teams as they go through a pricing project. And And overall, what we have found, it accelerates the pricing transformation by, 3 times longer. Not 3 times longer, 3 times shorter, than, just organically finding things out yourself and, putting a hodgepodge of tools together, hoping that that will fix the problem. It never does. So yes, there are things out there, fortunately, for executives. And it's great to see that these new tools and systems are there.
Well, that sounds really interesting, and I think that's something that I would like to dig into in a future episode. So maybe that's something we'll discuss next week. Okay, I think we'll leave it there today. Everyone have a great weekend.
Yeah, thanks a lot.